An Artist Talk with Kevin Cole and Jeffrey Paclipan.
Thank God it's there. But, when I talk about my work, I talk about it as being about, for the last 20 or 30 years, about four issues that keep evolving. And number one, the story my grandfather told me. Number two, two and three, there were two events that changed our lives forever. That was September 11th and Hurricane Katrina. And number four, the relationship between sight, sound, and color. When I talk about the idea of a story that my grandfather told me, I'm from Pine Bluff, Arkansas. When I graduated from high school, I didn't want to go and register to vote. My grandfather was 91 years old. His name was Sam Cole Sr. He lived in Terry, Arkansas, owned about 80 acres of land. So when every Saturday I would go there to take care of him and do things for him. And I told him, I said, well, if I go vote, I don't think it's gonna matter. So he kneeled down with his cane and drew me a map and told me to go to this area on his property. And I did, then I came back, I said, well, I had this scary feeling. He told me African Americans had been lynched by their neckties on their way to vote. So you'll see a lot of necktie images in my work. And when I talk about September 11th, I was supposed to be in New York, go there with Eric Mack. And that the next day I decided I wasn't gonna go. And then we have, all of a sudden, Eric was stuck there for 3 weeks. And Eric was there with a friend of mine by the name of Bill Stevens. Bill sent me a photograph of a little boy holding a piece of tar paper and aluminum. So I started working on tar paper and aluminum for my protest against September 11th. And when I talk about Hurricane Katrina, I had a lot of friends and frat brothers who lived there. And I started doing a process of mapping, because when they talked about the storm, they would show you, CNN would show you these maps of which direction that the storm went. So I got interested in the process of mapping. And so I started dealing with mapping in places that I've gone, places that were very important to me. And I picked up a lot of the debris from September 11th. And when I talk about music, relationship between sight, sound, and color, I listen to music in my studio. I listen to jazz, hip hop, R&B, especially a lot of blues. Actually, my grandmother gave B.B. King his start in Birdsong, in Twist, Arkansas. And if you listen to, there's a CD called The Best of B.B. King. He talks about why he named his guitar Lucille. Well, that was the lady that started a fight at my grandmother's club. Her name was Lucille. And this all happened at my grandmother's club. So blues is a major part of my work, but as the colors and things begin to get involved, even though you look at the idea of slavery or you look at the idea of lynching being bad, what I try to do is bring it to a different twist, how we worked around the idea of lynchings. So when you see the titles of my work, they're all positive titles. And even the piece behind me entitled Uptown Funk, James Brown, okay? And there's a lot of symbolism in the work when you look at the circles. When you look at the idea of a circle, it's something that's repetitive, going over and over and over. As an artist, you work in your studio daily, and you look at the whole idea of things happening. And at that time, there were a lot of killings of black males. You have this circle, redundant. It's like a twofold thing that keeps happening over and over. But then you have the X's have to do with the unknown. And you'll see the symbolism of the rod symbolize the cane that my grandfather uses. So there's a lot of symbolism, and I started using the scarf shapes. When I was in Iowa, I did a visiting artist, and I asked this group of teenagers to name one major African-American female who had made major contributions to America, on one that they can name with Oprah Winfrey. So I had them to do research on Catherine Dunham, Billie Holiday. So I started using the scarf shape as an idea of the struggle of women. And in these pieces, they're like a ladder. You got these steps going on. How do you get to the next level? So there's a psychological thing that's there. But there are these places, these abstract shapes. And when you look at this one, you got the circle there. There's like a trinity. You got 3 circles that's there. And so somebody asked me, well, why do you name it Uptown Funk? Because in the morning time, once I listen to music, one of my favorite tunes is James Brown, it's James Brown and the JBs, A Funky Good Time. So that musical thing, that gets me going, or even if it's gospel music. So that's the important part for me in my work.
Well, wow, that's pretty deep, heavy. I hope I can balance this out. So yeah, I appreciate you all being here too. Luckily we didn't have any bad weather so far. And so I really had to think about my process as far as the influence of my work. And it's really been recent that I've been painting ever since I was a young kid. I'm in my 50s now. So it just been hit me the last year and it's helped talk to Kevin and meet other artists, go to their art talks about their process and their influence in their work. So I've had to really regress back to the beginning. And one of my first influences in my work was just as simple as my mother giving me a coloring book. And within the pages was a tracing paper. So I'd open the book up and it totally blew my mind as far as it was a coloring book, but it was more than a coloring book. I could trace it, and then there was a blank page in front of the tracing paper, and I could transfer that. But after I colored the main page, I could actually shade. So ever since then, I'm like, okay, things can be more than what they are. But as I develop, like everyone as teenagers, you have your angst, and you try to fit in, who you are in the world. And at one point, I'm going to be bouncing around a little bit, but at one point, at age 19, I was in Alaska. My father was stationed there, and it was a turning point for me. I was drawing in my room, as we all do our projects, and I had graduated from high school, and I just kept doing art projects. And I remember drawing intensely, and my desk was facing a big mirror, a sliding glass mirror, and I looked, and I realized, I asked myself, what do I want to be? And as the angst and all the anger or whatever, the developing and trying to figure yourself out just hit me. And as I was going down this weird road, I started drawing, and hours passed. And I realized, okay, there's something to this. Drawing is healing, art is healing. So as the years progressed, being practical, I would do what little kids do, crayons. I used poster board, anything that was easy, accessible to get to, normal 2B pencils. But as I graduated and still broke, I started going thrift store shop, things that I could get. And I think I'm realizing what I want my work to be is dimensional, flipping the concept as in the puzzles of what materials can be. And I think it's part of my struggle of how can we be more than who we are? Like, whoever sees you, we all have our issues and problems, but as I am too as a minority in the South. And I look at that and think, okay, is that the bigger issue? No, I think the bigger issue is how do we all have a creative process and what do we do with it? And it can be very healing, and you could actually affect people's lives. So I'm actually very surprised to be here, but it's been a gradual progression, and I realize the more you connect with yourself, the more you're real with yourself, the more you surround yourself with like-minded people or who are trying to figure themselves out with no judgment, you do start developing yourself. So as I'm healing internally, my anxiety is less, and my self-doubt disappears, because you start to realize you do have value to whatever you decide to do in your life. So fast forward to 2012, I decided to step out of my studio and really figure out what does it mean to be an artist in Atlanta. Now, being in the military, we moved every 2-3 years, but I decided to pick Atlanta. I'd visit it once, and there was something about it. And it's kind of open. It's still developing, even now. So I felt perfect. Like, it's not an overwhelming city. Everyone wants to go to New York, Chicago. And I thought, well, let me go here. And my, what's the word? Rebellion against academia and the art world was, let me figure out who I am first and what art, let me naturally develop and let the materials talk to me. So over the years, I started to realize as I'm drawing, I'm trying to do like deep perspective and as you paint, and I've tried clay and all that. And then I realized, okay, let me look at material and see what attributes it has and just accept it. Just like if I was talking to somebody else, you know. And I would use Elmer's glue with discarded paint. I just use things that people didn't really think they could use anymore, or that it's just high or low. You know, they think it's not art if you don't use certain materials, and I just kept working on that. So around 2015, I started using the puzzles. And again, the gradual progression was getting away from the surface of the canvas. Little by little, it was glue, layers of paint, glass beads, sequence. And again, it's just, 30 or 40 years of just, I didn't rush. I was urgently rushing in anxiety, but my work developed. I just said, let it just develop, don't rush it. So again, 2015, the puzzles. So something with the puzzles changed dramatically for me because there's obviously symbolism in it, but I love the idea that people can connect to it. Now, it doesn't matter what race you are, it doesn't matter who you are. You know, people obviously experience puzzles. So I love the idea of transforming a material, transforming yourself. You could be anything you want and really let go of ideas that you've heard in the past or what people think and all that. Just trust your own instinct. So, so at this point, to have this body of work here, I've experimented with different shapes and I'm still developing. But the main point is that I finally connected with a material that I feel helps me with my story, helps me connect with people, and instantly connect with people, I hope, in a positive way.
Kevin, do you want to talk a little bit about, you obviously use a lot of different materials, and if they have different significance to you and how you landed on them, the way pieces.
Well, I think that every event that happened in my life, the materials are very important. Like I said, when you think about the idea of African American being lynched, that's wood. I'm bending wood. If you ask me how I've been in it, I'm gonna tell you it's an ancient black man's secret. Anyway, but the idea of the aluminum, the events that happened in my life, you know, just supposed to be. I mean, had I gone to New York September 11th, you know, I probably would have never gotten back, or probably have lost my job as well. But you know, materials are very important to me, and I try. And it's funny because I did a couple pieces out of copper, and the idea of doing the copper pieces was based on, that was the lady on Channel 2 with Peter Jennings was talking about. There were over 111 remains of September 11th, and it would cost the government pennies to find out who they are. So I started working on copper, you know, and the materials to me are very important, even when I work on paper. A lot of people don't know that those collages, they're printed on tar paper, you know, and the idea of tar paper is still dealing with the idea of September 11th. So mediums I don't have a problem with, and I'll try any of them. And even the print by the door is was done as an idea. In 2013, they asked 14 artists to do a piece based on the 50th anniversary of the Freedom Riders. And if you look down on if you look down on a map, those images are of the Birmingham jail where Dr. King was, and he wrote his letter. So it's called Midnight Hopes. So you would never find an untitled Kevin Cole. If you find untitled, it's not real, because I do my titles first. I write down my titles. I mean, even from listening to a song, listening to a sermon or something, that's very important to me. But I think what I want to talk about, what I want to really get across is that despite of the events that happened in terms of lynching, we moved on. Okay, so the work is about liberation, and they're always positive titles. in the work. Oh, color composition. Well, I think the color composition. Well, I studied at University of Paclipan. I did my undergrad there. Terrence Corbin, who you may hear about later, but he passed away. But he was a natural. He was one of the best colorists that you ever want to meet. And with my palette, I think even with the aluminum pieces, they got colored. To me, they shine. And I'm a part of a group called Afri-Cobra. And Afri-Cobra was started in 1968. And then Afri-Cobra stands for African Communion of Bad Relevant Artists. And we're celebrating 50 years right now. I joined the group in 2003. Well, I was invited to join. But they talked about the idea of Kool-Aid colors, high-keyed colors. And it's a lot of, and I think being a part of the group, I was already doing that, but I didn't realize the color combination that was so important in the work.
On the dimension, is there some particular thing that drew you to either to that third dimension? Because all of your work is coming out and sculpture in some fashion. That two-dimensional work would do it for you?
Well, I think for me, my undergrad scholarship, it was in sculpture, but I started doing paintings. So I wanted to do painted sculptures. I wanted to come away from the wall. And I've always been even though I'm doing sculptures now, but I always wanted to do, not just be flat. If you notice, everything, it sticks out. And for me, is every piece I do is like a puzzle. Everything is put together. So you got pieces put together that happen to give you that 3D effect.
And for me, it's on a deeper psychological level. I'm trying to really work with material and layer it like masses of material. And what interests me is whether it's confetti or even puzzles, it's interesting to me that people utilize these materials, they're familiar with it, but once they're done with a puzzle, they just discard it, or a piece is missing, and it's not utilizable. But I look at the cut and I look at the material, and I also think of scale and weight, and also it's part of my natural instinct to just constantly, work in a rhythmic pattern. So I could work on a puzzle work, and it could take me, hours and hours, and I will be in a zone. I know you probably know how that is when you get in that zone. Yeah. But there's something to this urgency to connect the material, and I don't even really look at what I'm doing. I have to walk back. So when I first did my first piece, it was a flat. It was the color of Ghost Dancer there. That's recent, where I totally broke away with the flat canvas, flat back. The first time I walked into the thrift store, I always look at really analyze what's there, and there's this box, and they probably think I'm crazy, but I'll stand there for like an hour, like, here's a box of a fabric, here's a box of a fabric. And I'll walk away, okay, there's something. So I walk home, get home, and I threw the canvas down thinking, okay, if I could just be a little more edgy or more contemporary. And when you look at a fabric folded, there's some kind of neat architectural graphic look. And then here I am with the puzzles, and it just clicked, because I've always worked with several types of gluing material. And of course, the back of the puzzles, it can adhere to, it absorbs in. So I'm like, okay, that's gonna be fine. But the first piece I did, I used the back of it, and knowing I was probably gonna paint it, because I was really scared to think of the color, like how would I use the color? But when I was finished with it, it was pretty flat, it had dimension, but the second piece was a fun challenge, because I looked at at least 10 boxes, which makes about 12,000 pieces. And instinctively, you just start, and I don't know how it happened, but to me now, looking back, it's almost like an impressionistic painting. It's almost like doing mosaic tile. And I don't really know until I look and go, okay, I'm looking at it in the lighting, I move it around the house. And the reason I paint some of them like, Ghost Dancer, is I'm a house painter by trade, so I'm constantly, like the movie Wax, or the Karate Kid, wax on, wax off. I'm constantly doing that anyway, so I go, well, okay, hours and hours, but the trick is to get back in the cracks, so I'll get lost in that, but that's part of the instinct. That's why I know there's something when you tap into your instinct, it makes sense, and you don't even have to totally understand it, but as you develop, no matter how long it takes, you'll understand it. Yeah.
And for the artist, how do you feel about the region being an artist? Does it have, you spoke about influence that you've had with the area, but in general, how do you two feel about this region? Does it have an direct impact on your work? I know Kevin specifically spoke about the issues with lynching and the southern issues. How does that affect your contemporary today's work?
Well, I think it affected us a great deal, and to be with a young gallery, because I never shall forget the late Jacob Lawrence told me that you want to find a gallery that you grow with. I mean, you grow, and then as they grow, hopefully they can take you to a different level. And I think what I was impressed with was they came by my studio 2 or 3 times. And I was a little bit nervous about showing because, Atlanta is a strange bird. It's here or there. People go to New York. I never shall forget that I was showing here with another gallery, but I had a gallery in Philadelphia. The clients here would go to Philadelphia and buy the artwork rather than come to my gallery here in Atlanta. And which was strange to me because, but Philadelphia was close to New York, and they would have the Omri show there, and they would go to Philadelphia and buy my work. And she said, well, he's in Atlanta, but they would just go to Philadelphia and buy the work, which I thought was strange. But I think there's a lot of things happening in Atlanta, and Atlanta is on its way, but but the only thing I don't like is Atlanta, you can be all dressed up and no place to go. So you have to go outside, sometime work yourself back into Atlanta, and then you get a chance to get the notoriety that you want.
And for me, being in the military, raised in the military lifestyle, I again picked this spot. There's something open about Atlanta. Again, it's still developing, I'm Filipino American, so I think of the minority thing a little bit, but I don't really dwell on it too much because as the city's growing, I feel like I'm not like in a rush to what am I saying? As art career, I'm just growing with the city, seeing it develop, and hopefully getting to meet other artists. And if I didn't step out, for example, I met Laura through an art group, and it was just kind of nonchalant. We developed a relationship, and so you don't know who you're going to meet, who are the new visionaries in the city. They're out there, like you said, dressed up, nowhere to go, but they're out there. You'll bump into them somewhere. So that's what's awesome about when you start realizing that you're not in alone, but if you can figure out ways to get out and try to meet people, because you have to be creative. And as far as trying to connect with different people, social media has helped me. I just last couple of years just post something. I'm kind of obsessive every day. It's almost like a positive reinforcement in the morning. I'll do something, post it, run away, come back later, and then just check it out. But it's just kind of reinforcing the positive mindset of, okay, I'm developing, the city's developing, we're all developing. Everything's, the world is slowly developing, changing. I think it's splitting to this new way of thinking, new way of healing, new way of self, again, realizing you can contribute something in the world. So again, I appreciate being here with Kevin as an educator, and we can learn something from everybody. So.
I have a question about once you've layered and compiled and configured and put all these materials that you've collected with their specific significance together, when do you know it's done? When do you know that, what does it become once they're all together, you know?
It'll tell you when it's done.
Yeah.
I mean, the pieces, I always say that you have that connecting it with the piece, it'll tell you when it's done.
Yeah.
And I think that that has happened to me a lot. And there are pieces that I've gone in back and reworked over, but I just feel like some pieces say, you know what, I'm done. And I think that's that connectedness. So we were talking about that with his work. When you look at what I like about his work like mine, is piece by piece. I want to name the show Piece by Piece.
Yeah,
Because when we look
forth.
at it, all of my pieces, there's no one piece that's together but that piece because of the print. But everything I do is like, it's like a puzzle of my life or what I'm going through that day. And I always tell the story that Michael Jordan, his wife, when she bought a piece, the piece was the piece was entitled, "If I Change My Name Tomorrow, Will My Journey Stay the Same?" And it was really about me meeting him and his father just passed. You talk about, you know, the idea of him having as much money as he had, he could not save his father.
And it's interesting how you use the puzzle analogy a lot.
And I want to use a tie analogy because you have ties, right? I've been dying to say it. I had no idea, so when he said tie, I'm like, oh, okay, it's freaky, it's weird. And the only reason I do tie stuff is, well, obviously, I have thousands of boxes of puzzles, but there's an artist I love, her name is Judith Scott, and I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she was in a mental institution for like 40 years, and I think it was her twin sister, took her out and put her in a art program for special needs. Judith was special needs, and I think she was mute. So they put her in this program for a year. She didn't do anything. But one day she grabbed some yarn and I believe it was a brush and a stick, and she wrapped it. But then they kept giving her more. So she had these beautiful, big, huge pieces of wrapped. And that blew me away as far as it was just instinctive. She was not educated. She didn't speak. You know, she just tapped into something. And for 20-something years before she passed, she kept developing these huge pieces. And they even x-ray and look inside the pieces. There's like rings she stole from other people and all that. Because in the mental institution, she couldn't even have a pencil or a pen, you know. And so it was a sad story, but exciting at the same time, going, okay, she didn't have to be told. She just kept doing it. And also she celebrated by wearing a hat, and sometimes she wore 3 or 4 hats. So I thought it was funny. You know, so I do this when I have a chance because it's just fun.
I want to tap.
Okay. Okay, well, I'll give you. We'll trade off.
I have a question for both of you. Kevin, you were saying that when you, like the first thing you do with the piece is the title, name of it. And for both of you that work with so many materials, when you conceive of a piece, like for example, Kevin, when you conceive of it, do you see it as a collage or a wood piece or aluminum, or does that kind of happen as you go along? And Jeffrey, do you see it as like a monochrome or a wall piece or a sculpture?
I think mine happened as it goes along because what I want to do a piece called "Waiting for Wakanda" after the Black Panthers. The movie, I didn't go see it. The movie, I was too cheap. I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, I waited till it came on Netflix, but I did buy it. But I'm trying to visualize if it's going to be a wall sculpture, it's going to be a freestanding sculpture. I'll wait, and I do a lot of sketching, and I know when it's going to hit me. But one thing, I'm fortunate enough, I have 3 assistants that help me, and they'll probably figure it out and say, hey, you know what? Let's do it this way, or let's do it as a freestanding piece.
Do you feel like that has to do with the content of what you're conceptualizing, or more like logistics?
Well, both the content, because when you look at the idea of now being in Atlanta and it was filmed here, and then it brought about a new thing for African American beings seeing themselves in a positive way. And to me, it's just like being an educator when kids, they come in your class and they not knowing how to draw. And I would always do in my intro class, I would do a still life where there were no instructions. In 28 days, we do the same still life with instruction. Parents would be amazed. And so it was like with African Americans, seeing yourself in a positive light. And even in the idea, I was out in San Diego, and I was getting ready to speak. And what amazed me was this little boy who was there. He was black, and he said, "You know what? I've never seen a black artist." And his face just lit up, you know. So it's those things that play an important role to me.
Do you cut out your pieces and put them together first before you add the color?
Well, I paint them first. Normally what I do is I do my kit first, which is a small one, and then I will put that together. Then once I do that, I paint each piece. And now they may not turn out like the maquette, you know, but I paint each piece, then I put each one together.
We actually have a couple on the
Yeah, right.
the little frame.
Small frame pieces, yeah. Yeah, you struggle. Yeah, but I always tell them my main thing, I got two songs I put on. I put on Aretha Franklin, Seeking Higher Ground, and Miles Davis, Kinda Blue. So somehow it works, both of them works me through. I mean, both of them, I can say seriously, they work me through my problems, because as an artist, as an artist, you struggle, you're like, this is just not working. I'm working on a piece now for a client in Arkansas. She's building her dream house. And the piece is 80 by 90. It's gonna go in her foyer. That's how big a house. It's gonna go in her foyer. And it's just not working. I mean, yeah. So I finally, the other day, my assistants came in and we turned it another way. Bam. Now it's working, but I found that the music I listen to plays an important role for me.
And for me, so far I've been consistent with the puzzles because it's unlimited. Like for example, the first few pieces were certain size pieces, and then as I'm collecting all these boxes, there's corkscrew, there's like really intricate wood pieces, and I look at those, and for some reason I know how to separate certain ones. There's lenticular ones that, reflective. I did one on my last show. And so it keeps me intrigued and exciting. So I go, I'm never really going to fail. But if they don't turn out as far as shape or, movement, I'll paint over it. For example, Into the Blue has huge puzzle pieces. And it's weird because everyone's seen puzzle pieces, but they can get as big as, 3-year-olds play with these huge. And so until you look at it, you're like, really? Yeah, that's just the way they are. And again, accepting what they are, reutilizing them, and making movement or making a shape. My mind just will wander where it needs to go, and then it just solves itself. So I don't, wherever I feel stress in life or other things, that's my place where I'm like, there's no really wrong answer. Of course, I want to make sure the scale, but I'm beginning to trust my instinct on that. But it's really freeing to me. And I will work on several pieces at a time to walk back. You know how that is, you walk back, you look at something, but really it just kind of flows when you're in that zone. I think I'm finally in a little confident space of developing.
Do you find that it's a really individual thing for you, or does it, like Kevin interacting with his assistants, do you, like, it helps?
Yeah, I'm by myself. I keep,
Bounce ideas?
yeah, by myself. kind of ridiculous. I talk to myself, but no one knows. But anyways, the point is that I'm going, I know this is, when you're young, you're a teenager, you're like, I don't want to listen to anybody. But I just blocked out academia, I blocked out traditional, and I really had to decompartmentalize my thoughts. And all I thought was, okay, my imagination, then there's no wrong. You know, I'm like, I'm in my imagination zone. No one can tell me no or yes or whatever. I just go with it. So I just go with the feel of a piece. So for example, the Ghost Dancer, I was determined to make a shape, and I'm always at Home Depot. I always try to think how to construct things, and I'm not an exacting. I don't cut perfect, and I have all these tools I was telling somebody, and I look at them, but I won't touch, a bandsaw. But I will, like for example, that piece has a very light building material they use on construction sites, and I just wrap it. I try to make my pieces as light as possible, look as light as possible, and I know as I'm aging, I want them to be lifted as light as possible. I don't want to be. And that piece is actually really light. The inside's fairly hollow. So it's a challenge to structure it, build it, but the limits are awesome, and who knows what the next show's gonna be like. But I love how it's bouncing off with your work, and we do relate, but we're really different, totally different type of experiences and backgrounds.
Sometimes you find yourself reconstructing the puzzle pieces when you're not just quite what you're looking for.
You mean if I get stuck? Let's say this. It's almost like an abstract painting to me, because, for example, that piece, when I've learned, like in abstract painting, sometimes your eyes go bouncing back and forth from edge to edge and edge. I actually do that, and I don't know how it works, but I go yellow, green, I'm like, and then it just starts, but you can only saturate the piece for so long, so it just starts to get filled. The issue with me is for hours, I'll be looking at every crack and I'll flip it upside down and but I know like it's done when it's really saturated. So, and again, I only had one or two pieces that were too blue or too this, and it's still very experimental for me right now. So I'm excited, but if it looks too much one way, then I go, well, I can just paint it. So it solves itself pretty much.
Here, separate your pieces, your coloring pieces, like a different palette.
Well, I haven't had time. I have one room so full of boxes. And I've always had an obsession. The good thing about editing like past work is I used to collect furniture, and it was a madhouse. So now I just collect these boxes. So I just have this, and they're stacked and stacked and stacked. But yeah, I have a box of lenticular, and I have a box of 70s, and I have these retro boxes. I've had some people give me some, but they're all really fascinating, So yeah, I'm trying to learn that, but I'm afraid it's gonna start inundating the house at some point, but I just grab them and start using them, because I'm like, I gotta start using them before it gets too crazy.
Could you speak about your creative process? And Kevin, I know you spoke just a little bit about your sketches, but just say from the generation of an idea to completion, like are you moving from one piece to another piece?
Mm-hmm.
Did you grow from something that you saw, you thought, okay, this is what about to go this way with it? Just if you wouldn't mind speaking to that.
Okay.
I work in series, and right now I have a series that's going on entitled "Stuck in the Middle," and it's about who do you vote for? You vote for Trump or you vote for Hillary? Mm-hmm. So you got these knobs, and that's where those knobs came from on Faith Bouquet is the name of that piece, but I work in series. I do a lot of sketches, and I do a lot of drawings, and I'm working on some smaller works that I had to put aside, because when people come by your studio, they always want to look at the new stuff. So we had to take them down and then like hide the small ones, because that's what they'll buy quick. Me, I do a lot of sketches, but the idea came about, I'm from Arkansas, and we see what we have in the White House now, and what we would have had, and the Bill Clinton Library has a piece of my work. And I had the opportunity to actually meet him, because my mom, she was a cook, and whenever he came to Pine Bluff, she fixed rolls and cinnamon rolls. He loved them. So with me, I decided to work on that series, but I work mainly in series from a lot of sketches and drawings, and I never know when a series is finished because I'll go back to some of the older things I'm doing because I'm, you may have I work with a master printer, and that's what that's when I started going back to the wall sculptures. And we did a 3D print that we pre-sold. But for me, a lot of sketches is involved.
And for me, I don't naturally draw. I mean, when I was younger, I would draw, and it just brought me back to the space of being isolated. Like I was a tight drawer. I mean, I would shade and really get into it, but in hours and hours. So I broke away from drawing in general. So I just use my imagination and just kind of start a project. But I do have a series, whether it's sequence or confetti. I work with confetti and glues and almost like a Pollocky. I just throw it on there and I paint on it. And then I have gift wrapping paper. And it's really like physicality of it. I like to sand it and rough it up and move it around, where the puzzle work is more relaxing. I'm just in a rhythmic pattern kind of thing. So I'm really using my body and movement and not thinking too much, because I do regress back to thoughts of, religion and all that stuff, politics. And so I think to keep me or everyone else healing, once you get into that place that that is your freeing whatever it is, it can help you, at least your blood pressure and all that stuff. Calms down.
So y'all are speaking very cordially to each other and to us, but you have two different artists in one little space. Beautiful space, but how did you navigate this? I mean, did you set up who goes where and what's next to each other? Because context changes when you look at a piece, and so how was this set up, and how much conflict was it, and how was conflict? So you were somewhat surprised when you came and saw these pieces.
Well, I wasn't really surprised. I knew when she explained that she was going to integrate them, and I always say that I do what I do. I paint, I create, and I let them do what they do. And when I saw it, I was like, wow, the way they integrated them, I really like, especially that back room. It's like everything sings, everything. And then even with these two pieces, I was excited about. And then having his piece, because there was another piece was coming from my gallery in New York that didn't make it. So then when she put Jeffrey's there, I'm like, wow, that fits. Because it was supposed to be a hanging piece hanging from the ceiling. A suspended piece. Yeah.
But yeah, it wasn't, I didn't shock them. They knew the work.
Yeah.
It's great. I think there's strikingly different artists, but the more and more you're interacting with them, the interesting similarities really.
Yeah. I had a professor in grad school that used the term hot combo a lot to talk about two pieces that really work together, and I like to think about that when I place shows, that like two pieces together can be really hot combo. Like Kevin's wall sculpture here and Jeffrey's freestanding piece, so it's really hot together.
Like these two little ones.
Yeah.
That was really amazing.
Yeah, thanks for your question. I'm curious if either of you, since this is actually really, really wonderful example of a two-person show, because outside of the opening in the gallery, Kevin and Jeffrey have gotten together a number of times for studio visits and things like that. So I wonder if showing together has you learned anything new about your work, or noticed some strong connections that weren't, immediately obvious.
Well, I think well, actually meeting and talking a lot with it's been great. And then I think our working style is he works a lot. I mean, I would people tell I'm up late at night. You know, I'm sure you got my emails when I'm late. Yeah. But I'm up late at night working, and then we've talked about life, you know, philosophies. You know, he keeps saying, well, how do you do this? He has a ton of questions like, how do you get in this collection? How, you know, but which I enjoy because it's like we're learning from each other, and especially with his knowledge of building things. I really enjoy. And I know this is probably going to be a great friendship as well, because we're both on the south side too, and our studios are not far from each other.
Yeah, I was shocked at how close he was to my space, and that he's so established, and he's very approachable, obviously very easy to talk to, and he loves reaching out to people, educating people. So he makes you feel very comfortable, and just having the work. I really was worried, like, how would they balance out with each other, and you did a great job. But now looking back, because I have a house full of stuff, and you know how it is, I don't know what it looks like, a nice clean wall, and to have them talk together, that's what I was hoping, you know, they would work together, and they do in this space. So I didn't really think about it too much until Ann has a good eye. She hung it, and Kevin made me realize, you know, we're just artists. We have our different ways of expressing where we have a similarity, and even coming from totally different kind of backgrounds in life. So it's a nice crossover.
Any other questions? I have one more, Kevin.
Yeah.
Will you talk a little bit about how being an educator for so many years has affected your practice and your art?
Okay, I really don't know how I did it for 32 years. And still worked in over 40 public art commissions. And, you know, I really, once I retired in 2016, and it's like my schedule has never, you know, I'm going. And I think the education part really helped me out a lot, because I've always liked the idea of teaching. I think it was two things I put it for, was to make art and teach. And it's been an experience, but I didn't know how I did it all those years, and then traveling from place to place doing visiting artists. But it's been an adventure that I really enjoy. But like I say, I say it all the time, you know, how did I do it? You know.
Have energy.
Yeah, I guess that's it.
Do you miss it?
No. Because given the blessing to wake up in the morning, to decide on whether you want to go, I'm blessed to have 3 studios. I decided if I'm going to do a painting, if I'm working on aluminum, or I'm going to fabricate something. So, but I do miss the camaraderie, like, you know, talking to him, and he was just so eager to learn stuff about galleries and this and that, and shows and things. And I miss that part of sharing information. And so I'm doing a visiting artist. I leave Sunday. I'm doing a visiting artist at University of Arkansas at Conway. Then I go to San Antonio. But I like the visiting artist part, because I can go and leave and come back to my own space. Yeah.
Informal.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Sorry, please.
So we went to one of your studios, it's for Seek Atlanta. Which studio was that? Is that your painting studio?
Yeah, you went for Seek Atlanta. Okay,
Yeah.
I just had the painting studio, and then I had the fabrication, right, yeah. So now we have a third studio on top of the other space.
So you built
all the aluminum on, yeah.
Nice, that was
Yeah.
nice
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite studios.
Yes.
It's
Thank you.
amazing.
Thank you.
All right, well, is there anything else that you guys feel like you wanted to chat about?
We just want to thank everybody for coming out, and we really appreciate it. And thank you all for having us.
Thank you guys. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.